Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. 1,000 shows in the rear view. Welcome to 1,001 as we count down to tomorrow's trade deadline. Do not forget, for those of you that join us live, or even you podcast listeners that might want to get a little bit of extra info or kind of stay on top of the trade deadline, tomorrow is our annual extended trade deadline extravaganza. We will be going live at 11 a.m. tomorrow, right through the deadline to our normal time of 3 p.m. And then once everything is settled down, we'll be doing a marble race, which might be a little later than normal. I guess we will just wait to see what we hear from the Winnipeg Jets and around the league. Already been a couple deals from last night and one just coming in this morning. We'll get to that in just a moment. JP Vigier is going to jump on with us. Looking forward to talking to Vig, not only about his thoughts on the Jets and what he'd like to see them add, where they're at, the power play, but what it's like being a player in the room. Vig, of course, was on the Thrashers of the year. They did make their all-in push and grab Zhitnik and Keith Tkachuk, if you recall, and also kind of what it's like for some of the players that are on teams like that, but maybe in the bottom six, maybe looking at having an even more uphill climb to be in the lineup. So Vigia is going to jump on, and then Murat will be with us from Philly. We'll get ready for tonight's game, Jets versus the Philadelphia Flyers, and get Murat's thoughts on the latest around the deadline, what is out there, what Kevin Cheveldayoff is up to, and what this team might look like tomorrow afternoon, post-trade deadline, when we get into the weekend. Going to be a real fun show. Great to have you all with us. And just I wanted to thank everyone. We had so many nice messages yesterday on a pretty big milestone for Winnipeg Sports Talk, the 1,000th show. If you missed it, I would definitely suggest you check it out. We had great stuff with Frank Saravelli, Wyshynski, Rennie, and Gary Lawless came on today. But the other thing I just wanted to let you know about, Connor Rabchak did a really neat audio documentary for a project on kind of the story of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And we premiered that after yesterday's show. You can get it on the podcast. It's also up on YouTube. And the feedback on that has just been great. So if you are kind of interested about the story of the station shutting down and what was going on behind the scenes before this got going and really was born, Connor did a great job of that. It is up right now at YouTube, but check it out. And congratulations to Connor for doing such a great job on that, and thanks to everyone for the great comments on that. As I said, we're busy today. There's lots going on around the league, and we're waiting for hopefully some big things to happen for the Winnipeg Jets, so we will dive into that. Before we do that, huge thanks to all of our sponsors. Coolbet, I do want to quickly mention to you, and we'll touch this later on, but our next poker tourney, Winnipeg Sports Talk, Edmonton Sports Talk, and the Lock Shop. We've normally done these on Tuesdays. Now that football's over, we're going to try a Sunday nighter. So this Sunday, 8 p.m. is when we'll be getting going. There'll be a $100 bounty on my head, a $100 bounty on Remis's head, Dustin Nielsen and Tom Gazzola as well. If you haven't already, go over to Coolbet, click on poker, and download the poker software. If you go in tournaments, just search Lock. You'll see the Lock Shop tourney, and it is starting 8 p.m. Sunday night. There's only one place for me to go after last week's second place when I was taken out by Randy River is the top. I hope no one gets my bounty coming up tomorrow. But anyways, hopefully we'll see you on Sunday night. Wanted to mention that right off the bat. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Roldy's Transfer, Canadian Club, St. Vital Dental Center, and Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, fansfirst.ca, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. And we're also going to have Andrea pop by from the HSC Foundation as we finish up the overtime campaign for the Fund a Need campaign for the HSC. But let's get going. We've got some trades to talk about, and we got a game tonight as Eric Comrie will be starting tonight for the Winnipeg Jets. Michael Remis joins me now, and Remo, very fun show yesterday. Lots of great feedback, but it's back to the grind right now because this is crunch time for NHL GMs and a lot of Winnipeg Jet fans right now. somewhat impatiently waiting for something to happen to see what this team is going to look like tomorrow at 3:00.
Yeah, we're down to the final 24 hours or 25, I guess, now before the trade deadline. Very exciting. It brings back a lot of great memories doing this show. I remember we were live when the Jets acquired Jordy Ben. It was me, you, and Brandon on a three-way call. So, I saw clips of them announcing the Hossa trade to Pittsburgh from like 2008 Trade Center, missing curfew. Put that out. It's getting tossed around online. So, I mean, it's a good time of year. We have had some trades today even. We're still waiting on the Jets. I'm not too impatient. We can drag this out, Huss.
I'm more than happy.
Build.
I just want something to happen. Although, as we see some other trades happen around the league, and again, we'll get to the latest on this. If only Brock Nelson was on a different team that was not run by Lou Lamoriello, I think we'd have some more clarity on this. But from the sounds of it, like there's no concrete decision by the Islanders on what they're doing right now. Again, as we talk with Wyshynski, I think they would be insane not to capitalize on the demand for a player like Brock Nelson. Reportedly, it's unlikely that he would re-sign there. Which is a little surprising because he has been there his entire career. But, man, what an opportunity it would be for the Jets and for Nelson to get him in. We've talked about the fit for the last couple days, and certainly he is number one on the list. And then we're talking about the blue line. And Brian Dumoulin was traded. Let's get to a couple of these deals, Remis. Right. Oh, and just quickly as a tease for tomorrow. You were mentioning, being on for other trade deadlines. Tune in tomorrow, and when we have a few minutes where we're waiting for something to happen, Remis has found a clip of our reaction live on the air when the Jets reacquired Matt Hendricks a few years back.
This is an all-time clip, but here, while we're talking about trades, I did find this here.
Oh, good.
As you can tell, we have a trade.
Well, be playing
that
this
draft
all day
was so
tomorrow.
great. That draft was so great in the Sphere last year. Cannot believe they're decentralizing it this year after the incredible show that we had last year. Well, yeah, I'm pumped that you've got that. Hopefully we'll be firing it up quite a bit tomorrow, and all the insiders can trip over each other to tell us that Brock Nelson is a member of the Winnipeg Jets, and maybe some help on the blue line as well.
Yeah, we're waiting to see. The trades are coming in. We did have a player placed on waivers. Ryan Reeves placed on waivers by the Toronto Maple Leafs happened at 1:00. Frank Cervelli teasing that, like half hour ago, saying some big name is going to be placed on waivers because the team is looking to clear cap space, and he's got a decent cap hit. Ryan Reeves, it's not that 1.35, but he's getting paid this year and next year. So every dollar does count at this time of year. Has as many teams up against the cap, trying to make trades. So are the Maple Leafs in on a player like Mikko Rantanen, who's up there? Now I'm going to bring up the trades that have happened today because we've had two.
Yeah. Let's. You want to start with the Dumoulin deal with the
Sure.
Devils and the Ducks?
Yeah, Brian Dumoulin was a guy I thought, maybe could the Jets be interested in a defensive defenseman who's won a Stanley Cup before, but he's off to New Jersey from the Ducks. I'll bring up the TSN's got a pretty good trade tracker here. It looks good on our screen. Not a lot of ads and stuff. So that trade was Brian Dumoulin to New Jersey for Herman Traff and a 2025 second-round pick. The Ducks are retaining 50%. The draft pick is conditional. It can be the earlier of either the Edmonton or Winnipeg selection in that round. Because New Jersey had a Winnipeg draft pick. I have to remember how.
Yeah, that's for the Toffoli deal.
The Toffoli deal.
Tyler Toffoli.
Oh, yeah, he was on New
him?
Jersey. Yeah, he was on New Jersey last year. I do remember Tyler Toffoli. He went viral for having a sleepover with Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith after they all scored in the same game. Sleepover in a hotel, so he had the cot. I don't know if you're going to get peak performance sleeping on a cot, Huss.
The veteran got the cot, and his wife, Kat, had some pretty funny social media tweets about that, as well as a picture of the three of those. But yeah, The Jets don't have their second-round pick this year. That was part of the Toffoli deal, so that could be part of the return for Brian Dumoulin. And Dumoulin's a UFA. I mean, I think this gives you a pretty good idea about what the market is like. Probably a lesser prospect and a second-round pick for Dumoulin. Dumoulin's a very serviceable player and a guy with a cup ring, which I think that you'd like. I was a little surprised Jersey went this route, considering the massive hole they have on their first line right now, with Jack Hughes reportedly out for the season after his surgery the last couple of days.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what they was going to do. Were they going to make them more Narantan? Were they going to pack it in us and try to sell some of their UFAs? It's tough. Your number one center goes out and kind of screwed. It's almost like, you can go ahead, but he was a top player having a great season. And it's like when, that year the Patriots lost, Tom Brady got injured. They had to throw like Matt Castle in a backup quarterback. It's puts you in such a tough spot. I know they still got a really good team, although they are battling injuries. Dougie Hamilton also out 3 weeks. So I think that Dumoulin helps, but second round pick, that's a decent price. They did retain 50%, so maybe they're looking to do more, but that's got to be tough. The day, I guess it's good timing. It's like the week of the deadline that that he's out, but still, like, that's a guy you're hoping to have for a playoff run. And, a fluke play where he's going to the net and his skates get tangled up with Jack Eichel and goes headfirst into the boards and opted for season-ending surgery. So that's a real tough one for New Jersey.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jets will see Jersey tomorrow. And as I mentioned, looks like Connor Hellebuck will be playing tomorrow night as Eric Comrie goes up against Urson tonight. We'll hear from Scott O'Neill coming up in a few minutes. Nico Sturm and a 7th rounder go to the Florida Panthers for a 4th rounder. And then, Remo, this just happening literally as we went on the air. The Vegas Golden Knights bring Riley Smith back into the fold. Going back the other way, Brandon Brisson and a 3rd-round pick to the New York Rangers, who are still very much not out of it, but it seemed like they were more than willing to trade Riley Smith for the last couple of weeks, and a reunion with the Vegas Golden Knights happens today. Maybe his old pal Marchessault will end, well, probably not with that contract that he signed in Nashville, but one of the original misfits back with Vegas. And there's another forward off the board. Although, again, with teams like Tampa and now Vegas making some of these moves, it does make it more difficult for them to acquire more players. And I'll say this, and I was just getting into this with Dusty on the Lock Shop. We hear that Toronto's in on Brock Nelson and Colorado. The one thing the Winnipeg Jets have over these other teams is the cap space. The Jets have $12 million in cap space. If the Leafs are making a deal, it's basically dollar in, dollar out. That's why they're putting Reeves on waivers right now. So Kevin Cheveldayoff, with the ability to pay the price, also doesn't have to pay an exaggerated price that some teams might do to retain salary or contract right now. So it is interesting to note. Now, listen, we're going to get to tonight's game in a minute. But let's just give you a quick update from some of the insiders on what they're hearing from around the league on the Jets. Late last night, the Leafs were playing Vegas. They dropped an insider trading, and here's what Dregs had to say. He's hearing the latest on the Winnipeg Jets.
Is second-line center still the number one priority?
That's exactly what the priority is. And look, it could come down to Toronto, Winnipeg, and ultimately, I guess, comes down to Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders deciding whether or not they're actually going to trade Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson would be a real good ad as a 2C for the Winnipeg Jets. If he's not available or they don't have the package, or, sometimes trade protection comes into play too, when players have to waive to go to Winnipeg. In this case, it feels like Nelson would be willing to go to Winnipeg. If that all falls through, then I think that they would consider Yoel Armia as a bottom 6 player who can play in the top 6, and they'd also like to add a veteran defenseman. And Winnipeg also has the prospects coming that would facilitate a trade like that.
All right, so there's Darren Dreger. And, we've heard the name Armia mentioned a few times, a big body. I mean, much like Riley Smith going back to Vegas, a guy that knows this team and a lot of members of this team quite well from his time in Winnipeg. Elliot Friedman was on the TNT broadcast last night as they did their run around the league. And here's what Elliot had to say that he's hearing on the latest on Winnipeg and Kevin Cheveldayoff.
It's an important year for the Jets. They're a great team again, regular season. We remember what happened last year in the playoffs. They are eager to show that that is not who they are, and they're better than that. I think also, with Hellebuck at the top of his game, you have a team and a group of players that believe they can win every year. I think they're very active. As you know, Anson, one of the biggest challenges the Jets has is they have to navigate who's willing to go there and who isn't. So I think that's as much a challenge for them as more than it is for anybody else, but I think they're trying it. I think they're very interested in Brock Nelson. I'm not exactly sure 100% yet that the Islanders have committed to trading him, but I think they're very in on Nelson, and I think they're also in on maybe, if not one, but two defensemen. I think they're really looking out there. They like their chances, and if they can't get the biggest player on the market, I think they're going to bolster all the overall holes in the organization.
Elliot, and that's exactly kind of what I'm feeling right now. I mean, the big push is on for that 2C, and obviously the guy at the top of that list is Brock Nelson. You do wonder if Lou all of a sudden decides, no, you know what, we're going to make the playoffs and win the Stanley Cup, and Brock isn't going anywhere, where they pivot. If you look at the daily faceoff trade bait board, the next guy on that list is a guy that we will probably see tonight in Scott Laughton of the Philadelphia Flyers, who, of course, recreated the Last Supper photo at 529 last week while the team was here in Winnipeg. But there's not a lot. I mean, Riley Smith was number 5 on the board. He's gone, although not really a center anyways. And then Casey Middlestat. But, I mean, can you see Winnipeg and Colorado making a deal? I can't. Considering there's a good chance that if these teams do well, they may end up playing against each other. So the waiting game is on. Figure out the 2C, and there'll be plenty of irons in the fire for a number of defensemen on the market. And I think that is music to Jet fans' ears to say that there might not just be one, potentially two adds to the blue line, not only to fortify the depth, but improve that top 6, which certainly would be a goal of the club. Now, Frank Saravelli, who joined us yesterday, was on DFO earlier today. Here's a question on regarding Brock Nelson, and the question is essentially Winnipeg versus the field for Nelson's services, assuming that he is moved.
I would take the Jets. I think they're ready, willing, able to make a deal. I think he's by far the best fit. I think he's a candidate to re-sign. And I think the Jets have the goods to pay what a team like the New York Islanders would be looking for. And there's no other center available that gets to the level of Brock Nelson that would satisfy the 2C need for Winnipeg. I like Scott Laughton, but I think he's a 3C. And you're not solving your problem if you go Adam Lowry and Scott Laughton. So it's Brock Nelson or bust for me, and if not, I could see Winnipeg pivoting to just a defenseman.
There's Frank from earlier today at Daily Faceoff, and Remis, we've kind of been having this convo, and I've been mentioning this for the last couple days. We haven't really talked about what else is out there, but I have to admit, I'm right there with Frank. Once you look at that board, it does sort of feel like it's Brock Nelson or bust. And listen, that's a good thing for the Islanders to be in a position of strength when trading, but also a great thing for Winnipeg, as we mentioned, with the cap space that they have, as well as the assets that they have and are willing to deal to get a player of the caliber of Brock Nelson in.
We do have a trade to announce, actually, here from Frank Saravelli.
Okay.
Not the one that it's not Brock Nelson. Do you want me to play the thing? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think we should get ready for tomorrow and start playing the trade sounder as we do this.
Let me just make it like a bookmark. Here it is. One sec. Let me grab this.
As you can tell, we have a trade.
2, 1.
All right. What do we have, Remis? Give us some breaking news.
This is the breaking news. Done deal. There's a goalie swap. The Winnipeg Jets have acquired Chris Driedger for Capo Kakinen, as Frank Cervelli is reporting right now. So there you go.
Well, I did not have a depth goalie swap on my card, but Driedger comes back home, and as Frank mentions, Kakinen is a Finn, and he'll have plenty of Finnish counterparts down with the Panthers. And listen, with the Panthers moving Spencer Knight, they have fortified the back end of the goaltending. I mean, it's going to be Bob or bust for them as far as, come playoff time. But now they've got Kapanen, and they acquired Vitek Vanacek, who, of course, looked great against the Winnipeg Jets last Monday here at Canada Life Center as those teams went, as we saw San Jose come into Winnipeg. So there you have it. We have a trade to announce. It is involving the Winnipeg Jets. But it would be a surprising one, and one that really doesn't tick off any of the boxes that we've been talking about coming in. Although Driedger did have a nice run at times with Florida, was sort of the odd man out behind Knight and Bob, and now finds himself coming back home as a third goaltender for the Winnipeg Jets. But as I said, Eric Comrie, I think, pretty firmly entrenched as the number 2. But much like with Florida, it's Bob or bust. I think we know the guy who's going to be carrying the mail for Winnipeg in the playoffs, and he's number 37, and he's about to win a third straight Vezina trophy.
Yeah, looking at Chris Driedger's numbers this year, he's played 20 games for the Charlotte Checkers, 8.78 save percentage, 2.97 goals against. Hasn't suited up for the Panthers. He's been an AHL goalie last couple seasons. Played 2 games with Seattle last year, but did spend a couple years with the Panthers and one with the Kraken. So Chris Driedger, that's the trade to announce us. There we go. Add it up on the trade board.
You got to think that is the first of a few deals, because we're still talking about the 2C position, and we're still talking about the blue line. We are going to talk about this with Murat coming up in a little bit, and JP is going to join us right away. Before we do that, though, let's get ready for tonight's game in what could be the final game for probably a few members of the Flyers, and it's certainly not out of the question that it could be the final game for some members of the Winnipeg Jets with the deadline before it. Just as we do that, hey, we're all talking about buying Canadian and supporting Canadian right now, folks. If you're heading over to your local Manitoba liquor marts this weekend, a lot of the things you might normally have purchased won't be on the shelves. One thing you can count on, speaking of Canadian, is the standard of Canadian whiskey, the legendary Canadian Club. Of course, you can pick up Canadian Club Original, Canadian Club 100% Rye, and all of the Canadian Club offerings will be waiting for you at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And great way to enjoy yourself, get some of the best whiskey on the planet, and keep it Canadian as well. So keep your eyes out for the good stuff. CC at your local Manitoba liquor marts this weekend. And thanks again to James and the gang for that great whiskey tasting we had last week. Folks, if you got a move planned coming up as we transition into spring and summer, talk to our pals over at Rowley's Transfer. Family owned and operated for over 60 years, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, to take care of you and your family on to your next destination. What you're going to want to do is head over to their website at rowleys.com. Click on that request an estimate feature up in the top right corner and let them know. First, put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and supplies for WST listeners. And then let them know when and where you're moving and what needs to be moved. And the friendly staff at Rowley's will turn it around quickly with a great quote for you and get you locked in to get the white glove treatment that Rowley's Transfer is famous for. For your next move, make it Rowley's, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rowleys.com. Spring is just about here, folks, and there'll be a lot of spring cleaning in and around your property and your place. What about your mouth? If it's been a minute since you've been at the dentist, maybe it's time for a little spring cleaning of the grill. And my pal Dr. Terry and the gang down at St. Vital Dental Center would love to welcome you in I saw Jamie Thomas there last week, speaking of $1 million smile. So if Jamie's teeth looks that good and that's where he gets it done, it's a great spot. But honestly, an amazing staff, great facility at 167 St. Anne's with free parking in the background. And listen, they've been serving generations of Winnipeggers at St. Vital Dental, now in their new home at 167 St. Anne's. If you've been delinquent in seeing the dentist, head on down and see Dr. Terry. You can find out more on all of their services and contact online at stvitaldental.ca. And hey, we had a big show yesterday, 1,000, and so many of those has been powered by our friends at Manitoba Battery, the local go-to spot for all things batteries, where you'll shop local and you'll get the best prices in town, period. Beating the pants off the big box stores. Whether you need a car or truck battery or getting ready to get that ATV out, still sledding, batteries of all makes, all models, all shapes, all sizes at the best prices in town. And get this, speaking of customer service, they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. You can visit them in store, Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive, their new location in the south side, or simply give them a call or order online today at manitobabattery.com. All right, Remo, JP Vigier coming up in just a couple minutes. But let's hear from Scott Arniel. He spoke before tonight's 6 p.m. puck drop Winnipeg time. Arnie, here he is on what he wants to see from Eric Comrie, who's getting the start tonight.
Run support. Honestly, his goaltending has been outstanding for us. I don't know what it is. We did score some goals at home for him, but now we need to do it again here on the road. And no better time because we haven't hit the net or lit the light as much as we wanted to lately. So, but Combs gives us a chance every game.
We mentioned Eric Comrie in the net tonight. Now, the Jets still have a league best plus 70 goal differential. They are third in goals scored behind only Washington and Tampa so far this year. But they haven't been going in as easy. I mean, some great goaltending performances lately, a little bit of puck luck, power play got going, but certainly will be, as the coach said, looking to give Eric Comrie a little more run support. It is a relative scoring slump, but still hasn't been up to Jet standards. Here's what Arnie had to say about that.
And that's so. The other thing I always say is that when these type of things happen, don't get farther away from the net, get closer than that. And we say that to guys lots, that if you're not, it's not going in for you, get around that net, get some greasy ones, and some of those hack whack rebound type goals. Maybe that's what we need, and that's something that being on the road especially that we need to do.
All right, Jets head coach Scott Arniel. Now, listen, the power play clicked again last game. Two beautiful goals, very important goals, but they got nothing at 5-on-5, and it was a bit of a tougher night for the Jets' top line. Here's Scott Arniel on how that top line can bounce back from a bit of a rough one against the Islanders at 5-on-5.
Yeah, I think that, like I say, the easy thing for me is that whether it's that line or it's our group, is that defend first. Do what you need to do without the puck to get zone time, to get yourself out of our end of the rink. Those guys know. They've been really good, like you mentioned, all year, and they just when they do, they're a puck possession line. They get it, hold on to it, but they got to get out of our end a little quicker, and that'll allow them to play down there.
All right. Now, of course, tomorrow is the deadline. Couple lineup changes we'll touch on in a minute, but Kupari out, Gus in at center, and Dylan Samberg back into the lineup tonight. But as we'll talk with JP Vigier, I mean, this is probably one of the tougher 24-hour periods for NHL players going into the deadline. And Scott Arniel knows it as a player, certainly knows it as a coach. Here's what he had to say about playing the day before the NHL trade deadline.
I have not really thought about it. I mean, it's not much you can do. It is kind of awkward, I guess, when you are playing, especially us back-to-back on it. I just think that, these guys have been through it enough. Most of them have, and it's hard for the guys, obviously, when their names are being thrown around. But I think at the end of the day, guys have been through these experiences, and they kind of get over it.
Now, as we all sit here waiting with bated breath to see what Kevin Cheveldayoff does, the coaching staff waits to see what their team's going to look like come the weekend. Arnie just talked about maintaining the team chemistry if and when trades and player movement does happen.
Well, the biggest thing in this is kind of got to learn from some other guys I worked with in the past is you can't really do anything about it until you're told by the general manager this is what your lineup is going to look like tonight. And if those pieces are added and it makes your club a better hockey club, then obviously you got to make the adjustments and you got to do what you need to do. But until it happens, we may have to wait until Friday for this conversation or Saturday. We'll see what happens for the rest of the week.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel on the deadline, and more pertinent to tonight, Dylan Sandberg missed last game with a family matter. He is back in the lineup tonight. Here's Arnie on getting Big 54 back on the blue line.
Oh, it's huge. You know how much it is. I mean, him and P are such a good pair. They play so well together, and he's a big part of that penalty kill. So, he's having a real good year, and what happened when we lost him there for that extended period of time. And he's the type of guy that when you lose top four defensemen, it's a big hole in your lineup, and having him back is a big plus.
Scott Arniel's not the only one pleased to get Dylan Sandberg back. Probably no one happier than Neil Pionk. And Pionk talked about getting his partner back on the ice tonight.
Yeah, good to have his presence off the ice. He's a clown, goofball, lightens up the room a bit. So good to have that. And then on the ice, he's been a great player for us this year. So we're excited to have him back.
I know the last number of games, you guys work on the power play all year, but you're getting the chances that it's not going. And what did it mean for the group overall and the guys on those power play units to see a couple go yesterday or last game?
Yeah, it's good to get rewarded. I thought the last 3 or 4 games we did a pretty good job as both units. Had a lot of good looks, and last game we got rewarded for it. So it's we got to keep it going now.
What stood out to you about Philadelphia in the first meeting? It was a real tight game throughout, and really came down to the shootout, which is about as tight as it can get in the regular season.
Yeah, I think it's always their work ethic that stands out. Not only that, they got a lot of skill too. So tight game last game. I expect the same tonight.
So there's Neil Pionk. Now, we mentioned Rasmus Kupari, who went down in the third period against the New York Islanders. He will not be in the lineup tonight. He's in concussion protocol, has been on the bike, but will not play tonight. And that means Kenny will be happy about this. The Gus Bus moving back into center tonight. Here's David Gustafsson on getting the opportunity to play in the middle.
I feel like this is a position I'm best at, so it's kind of going back to neutrals. I mean, I would say the mindset shift doesn't change that much, but as I said, this is where I'm most comfortable at.
It probably really helps. I mean, you guys, whether it's been a combination of yourself, Kupari, Morgan Barron, Alex Iafallo, the four of you have kind of worked together for a significant chunk of this season. So, I mean, what expectations do you have for your line going into a game against the Flyers tonight?
Well, I mean, we know what we're best at. We know what we're good at doing, and it's played a lot of games now, so we know where we have each other, and we need a bounce back game here after these 3 last games.
All right, so there's David Gustafsson. He'll be in between Iafallo and Barron. On the fourth line, it'll be Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton, Nemetsnikov, Ehlers, Perfetti, and Connor Scheifele-Velarde. Looks like Stanley and Miller will be the third pairing on the blue line. Pionk is back with Dylan Sandberg, Morrissey, DeMello, and as we mentioned, Eric Comrie starting the first end of the back-to-backs, which means Connor Hellebuck will get tabbed with the start tomorrow night. All right, we're going to welcome in JP Vigier. Before that, I do want to throw out the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray to all of you. And this is a trade deadline question. And this is a question and a road I don't want to go down, but with 24 hours until the deadline and no clear determination that the Islanders will be trading Brock Nelson, the question is this. If the Islanders decide to keep Nelson and the Jets are unable to acquire him, what is your next best option or want for the 2C position and the ad in Winnipeg? Is it Scott Lawton, or do you agree with Frank Saravelli that is not quite the level of a player that the Winnipeg Jets need? Maybe is there a guy with term? Maybe there's a guy that we haven't talked about. Let us know in the comments. We'll revisit this a little later on fan feedback for fansfirst.ca. But who's plan B at 2C? That's the why not question of the day. Let us know on that. All right, Murat coming up in about 20 minutes. But right now, let's welcome in our pal JP Vigier to talk a little deadline and get his thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets heading into these back-to-back games in the deadline. Vij, what's going on? Great to have you back on WST.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, exciting time of year. This is probably this and free agency and 1st of July when summer hits and you can sit in the pool.
Well, the free agency is a little different because everyone's gone their separate ways and the scenarios are pretty clearly drawn out as to, whether teams are going to be, if you're a UFA or an RFA. This is a totally different ball of wax, though. Take us back to your Thrashers days. I mean, what are the 48 hours like in the dressing room and around the team as you get closer to the NHL trade deadline?
Well, there's a couple different scenarios, right? I've actually been on both sides. So let's take the fun side first. If you're a good team and you think you have a chance to make a run, what is the general manager going to do to help us, right? Like, who is coming in? Alexei Zhitnik, Keith Tkachuk. We've gotten quite a couple big heavy hitters come in at the deadline, and you just went, ooh, we just got real good. Like, what can we do now? So it almost gives you another boost of energy and some excitement, right? The anticipation of Christmas for a little kid. What's in that box? What's the present? Ooh, we got Keith Tkachuk, that's a big, heavy hitter. Power forward, could do a lot. On the other side, if you're a team who's not so good, what are we going to be left with? What do they want? And how bad are we going to be for the rest of the season? And almost demoralizing, and you turn into, well, I got to play to keep my job because I'm stuck here. I want another contract. How do we do that?
Pretty clear the Jets are in the first of those two categories. Despite a little bit of a hiccup over the past week and feel the goals drying up. Nice to see the power play get going. They are a team that has been clearly reported as an aggressive buyer if possible. You watch this team all the time. I mean, when you look at where the team is right now, put your GM hat on right now. What are you looking to pull off before 2 p.m. tomorrow?
Well, to be honest, this 3-game or 4-game skid, whatever you're calling it, is actually perfect timing. Because now you see the deficiencies of this team that you need to address, right? Secondary scoring has got to be at the utmost priority for this team. How they make it work, like the third line's dried up, right, of late. The second line's been okay, but hasn't produced a lot, right? The fourth line hasn't produced. So can you add a couple pieces to augment offensively without taking away the chemistry? I really think that's going to be an interesting key because the Jets have been known for scoring. They haven't scored of late. Yes, I know the games have gotten tighter. Everyone's in playoff battle mode, trying to grind every point because playoff points are of the utmost importance. But the offense have dried up for the Jets, right? So you got to address that. You can't count on Scheifele's line to only do all the scoring. Because in a game, if they're playing the other team's top line, let's call it a wash. You need to find secondary scoring from something else. And I actually think they have to add a little bit of offense from the back end. We have not seen enough offense from the back end like we have in the past. That start of the year was real good. What have we seen of late from the back end offensively? Hasn't been a big push, right? So I think it's very important to look at that. And if you're going to play Vegas in the second or third round, you need some beef, right? The Jets are big, but the back end could really use some beef from a physicality. I'm not even talking fighting. Can you protect the front of the net? Can you move the puck? Some experience in those situations. I think those are the keys that they're looking to do. That's a lot of check boxes to try and fill in the next 26 hours or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that we're looking at all of these aspects of the Jets where they can improve, and they are still on top of the standings in the National Hockey
League. It's a great problem to have, right? Like, yeah. You got to dissect it to the smallest detail. Like, if we're not really looking, hopefully the Jets finish first. They play whoever's in the first wild card spots. It's Calgary, Vancouver, St. Louis. Even those three teams pose three different problems. St. Louis is big and heavy. Do you have the oomph to battle those guys for a 7-round series? I think so. Calgary and Vancouver, different bags of worms they have. Both got strengths and weaknesses. For round 2, you're looking, it could be Vegas, Colorado, LA, all these teams. Oof, there's some big, heavy teams coming into the mix on this. Dallas?
Well, the Stars right now, I mean, to me, the Stars and the Jets, I mean, they are the top two teams in the West right now. And
Scary.
You know, if you're fortunate enough to get through that first round, regardless of who you play and where you finish, it's very clear you're going to have to deal with the Dallas Stars in the Central Division. And
they're not done tweaking, right?
I was just about to say, I mean, listen, we've heard this crazy scenario with Rantanen being retained again and potentially making a move to another team, making $2 million a season for the remainder of the year.
He looked on the second line.
Well, I mean, listen, when I look at the Jets, I mean, we've talked a lot about the second line center position, and, you know, there'll be wingers out there, and the Jets have been rumored to be in on some wingers. But to me, from my perspective, at least, JP, the 2C spot would be the biggest upgrade, certainly at forward, and Brock Nelson, if they could make it happen, would be an absolutely perfect fit. We saw what he did to the team on Tuesday night when he had a goal and assist against Winnipeg on Long Island in what could be his last game at home.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I watched that game too, and he can do some stuff. And I'm thinking, can the Jets just make... And Kevin Cheveldayoff is very quiet. You know, he's kind of like the Lou Lamoriello of, you don't really know what's going on till it comes from left field, right? You know, Stastny was out kind of, you know, out of nowhere in that game a few years ago, and he kept that player for a few years. Does he just go blockbuster with New York, pull a D and a forward out of that team, and then that just solidifies stuff, right? You know who we're talking about when you do those two moves, right? So you pull in a big D from New York and you give him a first and a player. I don't know what it's got and it's very important. Like, you look at it, and for me, what happened to Cole Perfetti last year, getting politely pushed out of the lineup? You can't have that anymore. He's got to stay. You have to see what this player can do come stretch time, right? Come playoff time, because is he worth the long-term contract that's going to be needed in a few years? Or is he going to be, no disrespect, Jack Roslovic, a very good, serviceable National Hockey League player that you don't ink to a long-term deal because you might have younger guys coming up?
Well, let me ask you about Perfetti, because, I mean, obviously he was a real focus, and he had a little bit of a slump earlier this year. The second half of the season was where he really struggled last year, and you look at, you know, certainly what he's doing point-wise, and that's been much, much better and more consistent over the past month plus, along with Nikolai Ehlers. But it's about so much more than scoring points when we're talking about playoff hockey, because it is different. And from my perspective, he seems to have more of a fight in his game. I think he is more acclimatized to the National Hockey League. And so my hopes are higher for him going into the playoffs. Are you sort of with me on that, JP? Or what do you make of Perfetti right now and your expectations for what he'll be able to do when things get ratcheted up after game 82?
So I believe last time I came, Huss, we talked about this same player, right? What were the two keys we needed to see out of him? And we never even talked about points. Can he win his battles along the boards? And can he create offensive turnovers? Those are the two things that we had looked at. And that's number one. What have we seen out of him? The battle and compete on loose pucks. He is winning more 50-50 puck battles than he did at the start of the year when he was in that slump. That is so important. Can you generate an extra puck touch or two between him, Ehlers, and Nemestikov? If they can do that, that second line the other night against New York was really good in the offensive zone. Can you add a 5-second touch to that trio in the offensive zone by creating a turnover, winning a battle? And we're starting to see that more consistently. Now, the pace is going to get a little bit quicker and a little bit heavier here starting last week. So now can that continue to progress? Those are the two things I'm looking at. He started to do that because I questioned it. To me, he wasn't winning enough battles. And I don't care if you're Adam Lowry, Cole Perfetti, Kyle Connor. The key to being a successful player is you have to win battles. If you can't win battles, you're not going to extend puck touches. You're not going to create confidence. And you're not going to help the team generate momentum. So that's the first thing. I don't care how you go about it. If you smash someone, if you bite their ankles, how are you going to do it? As soon as you can do that consistently, there's a place for you in the National Hockey League, and he's starting to do that. Now, can he do it during the heavy time and playoffs? We have to see it. We have no idea what this player can do in playoffs yet.
Well, and that'll be the challenge for he and a number of players on the Jets to raise their level of game and be much better than they've been before. Another reason why I do have a lot of optimism, though, about what we're going to see from this team, regardless of how far they go, is that JP, you know, in sports, and this isn't just necessarily restricted to hockey, you need to fail and learn some hard lessons before you take those next steps. And I think it's safe to say that both the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche taught the Winnipeg Jets some tough lessons. And really, for me, it seemed like they've been pretty determined to give themselves an opportunity to change that narrative, basically since the puck dropped under Scott O'Neill in October.
Yeah. You can learn through winning, but you can really learn through losing because it hurts way more. And I think that's the key. And you almost want to have these little coach doesn't want to hear this, these mini slumps during the year once in a while, just to grab the attention of the group. Because if all you do is win, even if you're winning with bad habits, when it comes to crunch time, you haven't been able to address those situations. You've lost the room, you've lost the players, right? So I think these mini slumps allow the coaches to regalvanize the players, talk about their identity, the 3 or 4 keys, the reloading, the all lines look the same, doesn't matter, where they are, as long as they don't have the puck, they all look identical. All those things are very important. And I think everyone's talked about it. The Jets were embarrassed last year. They should have won against Colorado. Colorado had a game plan. They found a way to poke the Jets, and the Jets were never able to adjust to the needs that were needed for them to be successful against Colorado. Now, the Jets almost hold that badge of horror on their shoulder till they get past that first round, right? Now, everyone knows. Doesn't matter what happens the next, I don't know if it's 20 games or what they have left, the Jets. As soon as the 82 games are done, everything starts right from there. Yes, we've known they've had a good team for a couple of years, right? They were really good last year. They're really good this year. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter one bit, right? Everyone in the world is waiting for game 83. And that's where it all begins for the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, of course, before we get to game 83, you got to see what your team looks like on the 8th of March. And it's a pretty unique look. Take us through this as a player. Imagine being on the Winnipeg Jets right now. Team's got a little cold offensively. You've lost a couple games heading into tonight. You're in Philadelphia on the road, and then you play New Jersey tomorrow night. And in between that is the NHL trade deadline. So tonight's the final game before the deadline. And, you talked about the excitement of a Connor Hellebuck or a Morrissey or a Scheifele to see what the general manager does. There's also the kind of the bottom half of the lineup, if you will, that, I would imagine, probably goes into this game feeling like this would be a great time to have an awesome game tonight, considering what may or may not happen. Never mind potentially being moved out yourself. Even if you're not worried about that, you're wondering about where your spot is going to be next week after Chevy's done dealing.
Totally is, right? There is no bigger gun than the trade deadline. If you're a 3rd or 4th line guy and, let's just say the Winnipeg Jets bring in a center and a winger in a top 9 role. Where do these players fit? And what's the 4th line look like? There's a trickle-down effect to this. So let's say Anders Lee comes in, right? The Mestikov move down, is now Kapari and Gustafsson out? Like where does this all go? Or do they put Nemestikov on the 3rd line? Maybe he figures some speed, can create a little more offense. Where does this all go? Right? It'll be very interesting, and never a bad time to have a great game. It's always a great time to have a great game today for any player. But, you're looking at the young guys on the roster, are they able to solidify their position? Like Kapari's shown great things, right? But playoff time, you need a little more offense. I hate to say it, but you're going to need something a little bit more. And he's shown bits and pieces of, he's winning a lot of puck battles. His speed is so much better than last year. There's great confidence. Can he finish? He does not finish a lot because he's not going to get a lot of ice time, but can he finish a little bit, right? By adding, you're saying Nemestikov, Iafallo, Kapari's on that 4th line right now. Basically is what's going to happen. That's pretty darn good 4th line. They need to generate something, though.
Yeah, well, listen, Kapari is such an interesting player. And what we've seen from him being a regular this year is a guy that, has wheels right there at the top of the league. I think Remis was saying he was still clocked as the second fastest skating at any point this season in the league. You mentioned the puck battles. He's always there first. He's been doing a really good job of that. We kind of joke that if this guy had hands, you're talking about a star in the NHL right now.
Well,
but all those things,
4th line.
but all those things that we talked about that he does have are a big part of the Winnipeg Jets identity and a big reason why he has been in there But I mean, you are right. Like at the end of the day, we are going to be talking about probably a couple players coming into this dressing room and pushing everybody to be a little bit better and be better than the other guy to make sure that they're in the top 12 when Scott O'Neill puts up the lineup card.
And what if another team says, boy, that Kupari's pretty good. If we can give him a little bit more ice time, will he produce a little more offense? You know, is that a cookie? I mean, the scouts are looking, right? The eye candy test is there. He gets chances. He's, winning battles. His speed is fantastic. Does a team who Kevin Cheveldayoff is dealing says, we want Kupari and X for, Anders Lee? Well, does that change the whole dynamic of things now?
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt that Anders Lee's going to be moving around. I mean, can you imagine if they dropped a captain and Brock Nelson at some point? Although crazier things that have happened, like Lou, I mean, he just loves those guys so much. Listen, if they can get Brock Nelson on the move, preferably here, that would be ideal. And I mean, just quickly on that fit, JP. I mean, a 6'4" guy that can score, that can pass. I mean, he really can do it all. But adding that to Ehlers and Perfetti, I mean, we talked about how things are a little different in the playoffs. I mean, from your perspective, how beneficial would it be to have a guy that can not only produce, but a guy that's got a few inches and a few more pounds on the two wingers that are a little undersized in a lot of head-to-head matchups, certainly in the Central.
Yeah, and he's an underrated good skater to keep up with those guys, right? So the eye candy test looks really good. Tyler Toffoli's eye candy test looked really good last year, but didn't pan out, right? Per se. So I think you got to take a shot, right? Like, let's be clear. The Winnipeg Jets are first in the National Hockey League or second or whatever they are. Kevin Cheveldayoff is very methodical in what he does. I think this is an opportunity. I've seen him take big swings. During the lockout, when I was in the Chicago in the minors, he brought Stephen Weiss and Jay Bomeister into our lineup. Well, those are two heck of good hockey players that came to us. So he's not afraid to take that swing. We've seen it. What's the right fit? Like the Islander players, they kind of have that all in for it. They're not rock stars. You don't hear a lot of BS about them. They just go about playing. So Lou Lamoriello likes those guys, the clean cut. They have the shave. They're like the Yankees. They don't grow.
So do the Jets.
So that, in theory, that sounds like a good fit, right? But do the Jets need maybe a player who's got more swagger? Someone who can, 1 year we brought in Keith Tkachuk to Atlanta. You're like, wow, Keith Tkachuk's got swagger. That we know. He's got
that turned out.
Yeah, we lost 4 straight in the first round. See you later. I can laugh now. It wasn't so funny then.
No, but at the same time, you mentioned that time. I mean, that lockout year in the A when you were with the Wolves. I mean, the Moose, every team was stacked, really. I mean, the Moose took out Rochester 4-1. I mean, they had all those great players. Ryan Miller was there. And I think every team thought, oh, my God, we are so good. This is going to be the year. And then they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Wolves. We thought no one's going to beat the Wolves. And then didn't you see Mike Richards there in the Phantoms waiting at the end of the run?
In the finals. We were good. Like, I think on our roster, 3/4 of the guys ended up having long NHL careers. And they had some, American League veterans, and they brought in Richards and Carter from their junior season, made no other acquisitions, and they beat us. I think it was all 1-goal games or something, but they beat us in 4 straight. I was like, it took me like forever just to figure out what the heck happened. It was so fast. And I was like, and even at 3-0, I was like, we got this. And then the game was just like 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, and we just couldn't get over the hump.
No, that year, I'll always remember it, and certainly because the Jets weren't here at that time, and that was the closest thing during the time the NHL was away to NHL hockey here, because, of course, the league wasn't playing, and you had so many talented young players that, if they were able to, were playing in the NHL. Hey, Vish, just before we go, the power play clicked a couple times against the Islanders that had their first cold streak of the entire season going into it. Just thoughts on the complete turnaround from last year to this year. They're still number 1 in the league. They're pushing 32%, I believe, right now going into this game. I mean, how much that's done for Winnipeg overall in the big picture, and just thoughts on how they've done it.
One, it's huge, right? When your power play can be a juggernaut, consider it a goal every game, right? 30% is 1 for 3, right? So they're talking, if they're not having a great game, they're getting a goal from the power play. Well, your 2-1 loss is a 2-2 tie, you get an extra point, no OT, that can go either way. So that's a juggernaut anytime. Whenever you can have a power play that it's clicking at that percentage, the team just knows they are always in the game at that point. I think what they've done is they've moved, right? The slump that they were in just before the 0 for 16 or whatever it was, they were very stagnant. And I think that was the old Winnipeg Jets power play where we got the puck, we stopped. And then you started to see Nikolai Ehlers start to move again. And just that the motion of Nikolai Ehlers forcing the players to be uncomfortably unsettled creates so many lanes and holes. And, Velarde net front, and then he's backdoor, and then he's in the slot. And Scheifele can kind of up and down. Kyle Connor's everywhere. And on occasion, Morrissey slides into the sidewall. And that just creates so many lanes and confusion. I think that's given the Jets options. And the best part is they had success early. If this power play started the season and slumped out over 16 with all these new changes, everyone's like, it's the same old garbage. But they had success. Now the players believe the changes they've made are the foundation of their power play. They're not going to deviate from those because now they know this is how we have success. Look, we went from, what was it last year, 22%, not even, to 32%. You're talking, there's the proof is in the pudding. We've had success, we're winning because the power play is helping us. Now the coach can come in and say, boys, our power play is not going back to what it was because we continue to do, we're moving the puck, we're moving our feet, we're getting pucks to the net, we're winning battles. Those are the key points that they're looking at. And the players have all the confidence because now they know it works. They're not just waiting to see, is this new thing going to work? It works. We've seen more power play goals on the Jets than we've ever have, which has always been an issue for them. And all we've done is change one player. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be the way they do things.
No doubt about it. The second unit's been really good so far this year as well. And, I'm kind of with you. I mean, if you break it down, the difference right now with Winnipeg's lead over Dallas and the other teams in the West, you're compared to last year, you're basically looking at a few games that, you got 2 points or 1 and then 2 because of the power play. And it was nice to see it look the way that it did, even during the 0 for 16 stretch. There were a few power plays that weren't up to their standard. There was a bunch of others where they got great A chances, and goalies get paid too, and we're making some saves.
Totally.
So,
absolutely. And if you look at it, what are the Jets up 6 points on Dallas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking, we're 6 points. Let's go. That's 3 wins. How many of those early games the Jets get 2 power play goals in that game and 1-3-2? Right. Take away 3-4 wins. Now it's a lot tighter in that battle for first.
Hey, we talk a lot about how things change going into the playoffs. Just before we go, does anything change about special teams in the playoffs from your perspective, or is it still basically the same thing?
It depends on your matchups, right? Some teams just have better matchups against certain teams, right? And the Montreal Canadiens I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but maybe that's the one team that just kills the power play really good against you because they do something totally different. So when you're on a 7-game matchup against a team, sometimes matchups just that penalty kill has just owned it. The regular season, you only see it every 3-4 weeks against that team, be it in your conference or on the East. So you don't really care that much. In a 7-game series, if that team has your number on the PK, that makes a big difference in a series.
Vij, always great catching up, buddy. Enjoy what is to come heading into the deadline tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Should be exciting for everyone following the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll catch up as we get closer to the playoffs. Take it easy, pal, and thanks for doing this as always.
Yeah, sounds good. Talk to you guys later.
All right, good stuff with Vij. Murat Atesh coming up in just a moment from The Athletic. Wow, over 550 right now in chat. Hey, folks, hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already, and make sure, Jet fans, that you are subscribed to the channel and turn your notifications on, because tomorrow we'll be going live at 11 a.m., and having the notifications on will also remind you that Connor and Liz and Jacob will be live at 9 a.m. on Sunday. with a full recap of the trade deadline and getting ready for the Jets in Carolina on Sunday afternoon. Connor's going to join us tomorrow for, he'll be, I think, around for pretty much the whole show. I know Jacob Stoller's going to jump on. We'll have a packed show tomorrow. And again, we're starting at 11 a.m. Listen, before we get to Murat, let's get to fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market with no fees. When you go to fansfirst.ca and you see tickets and there's a price, that is what you pay, not a cent more. And certainly the best spot for selling tickets if you got an extra pair that you got to get rid of. Great customer service and quick electronic payment the day after the game. All right, well, I asked everyone, if Lou Lamoriello decides that Brock Nelson isn't going anywhere, which is his prerogative, what's the next best option for the Jets on the market at 2C? We see quite a bit of Dylan Cousins. Now, Cousins has a lot of term left on his contract, and that's a much different trade than, acquiring a guy that is a pending UFA. But I'll tell you what, Cousins at that price, if he could get back to where he was a couple seasons ago, be an unbelievable cornerstone piece for the Winnipeg Jets. I do see a couple free Villies in there. I'm not sure whether Villies going to be at 2C. Not sure whether Villi's going to be a Jet tomorrow at 3 p.m. We'll see if he's potentially included in any of the deals. The other guys that we're hearing quite a bit from, Johnny Bender says Jared McCann, and Jets fan 24, Donato out of Chicago. Donato, for me, might be that next one as far as like the actual offensive upside. Had a really good year, doing most of his scoring at 5-on-5. Again, pretty brutal team that he's on. Jay Brown says Ryan Strome, Kevin Berg, and Chris Mulligan, Warren Monroe, all on McCann. And then, of course, a few Ryan O'Reillys. And listen, Ryan O'Reilly would be right up there with Brock Nelson if he was available. Not sure that he's going to be into moving to Winnipeg, but he would be a great one. Donato from Tijuana, along with Ricard Raquel and Rasmus Ristolainen. Obviously, Risto, not a center. Keep your thoughts coming in the chat right now. Fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. All right. What a show yesterday, 1,000. Huge thanks to Princess Auto again for what they have done for us over the number of years. Of course, Princess Auto, proud supporter of so many things Winnipeg, as it is synonymous with the Peg. Founded here in Winnipeg, headquartered here in Winnipeg, and now coast to coast, but with 3 locations to serve Manitobans: Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and out in Brandon. You'll find the best deals and the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. And if you can't make it in store, shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Another great Winnipeg company that's been an amazing partner and supporter of ours is Wallace & Wallace, the fencing and overhead door specialists. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. They got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences, the leaders in temporary fencing as well. And folks, if you need a new garage door, Wallace & Wallace has the largest selection of overhead garage doors, so one perfectly to match your home and add value to it at the same time. Hit them up, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will be happy to come down and give you a free estimate. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com or pop down and see them in person at their showroom on Lawson Crescent, just off of Kenniston. And hey, you can sort of feel spring coming around. It looks like it's going to be like 5 on Saturday and Sunday. Well, with spring just around the corner, that means the change of seasons. You may need to up your menswear game. And of course, that means graduations and weddings. And our friends at F Apparel, the leaders in custom men's clothing in town, are ready for you with a couple great deals heading into the spring, including for 2025 grads. If you're graduating or have a grad in the family, get them a new suit at F Apparel, and they'll hook up that grad with a brand new shirt and tie at no additional charge. And when we're talking suits for the big wedding day, nobody does it better than F. Make sure to talk to the guys at F about a special discount for the wedding party when the fellas get their suits for the big day at F Apparel. You can see them at 190 Smith Street downtown. Check them out online. F, that's EPHapparel.com. you can also make an appointment to come in for a fitting there. All right, let's welcome in our good friend Murat, who joins us now from Philadelphia before tonight's Jets-Flyers game. And Murat, it is great to have you on the program. You were a guest on show number 1 of Winnipeg Sports Talk. We celebrated 1,000 yesterday, and we start another 1,000 with you back today. From myself and Michael, thanks for all the amazing contributions over the years. It's a big part of this program, and it is great to have you back on a pretty exciting week for people covering the Jets and fans of the team.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be there for 2001 as well. Congratulations, guys. This has been incredible to watch. And, beyond being a guest, I'm a fan. So I hope that much is clear. It's an exciting time to be talking to you, too, obviously. I mean, the Jets just completed their Chris Driedger acquisition from Florida. So there's a little minor league goalie swap for a very local product, Chris Driedger. That's there. And then obviously Winnipeg has done major additions every year that they've had a realistic chance at a cup run. So, we're fully expecting there to be more work done before the end of tomorrow's deadline.
I've been talking Brock Nelson for a while and really got fired up before the Islander game. And then he went out and did what he did against the Jets with a goal and an assist, and then the teary interview on the bench afterwards. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, this is a perfect fit for what the Jets need. I guess the big question right now, Murat, is Lou Lamoriello willing to actually make a deal with his team somewhat in the playoff race, although still needing to leapfrog a whole bunch of teams to get to that second wildcard spot?
Yeah, I mean, that's an enormous question. And to be clear, I don't have any form of relationship with Lou Lamoriello, but my insight into whether he'll decide to move Brock Nelson or not is more just me thinking out loud. And when you have a market like what you've got right now, and so many teams are in search of a center, so many teams are. You could say Minnesota, Winnipeg, Toronto. Tampa's already done some work there, so that's covered. There's New Jersey now that Jack Hughes is hurt. There are a lot of different teams, and that's not a complete list of center searchers. So in my mind, it's hard for me to imagine that with that many people looking for a center, with Brock Nelson's quality on the market, and with relatively few alternatives, Braden Shen, Scott Lawton, not quite in that same tier, I have to think that somebody makes Lou Lamoriello an offer that makes him say, yeah, okay, we are a few points out of the playoffs, only 3, but we also have a lot of teams to pass, and this would set us up for the long run. And so my guess is that Brock Nelson does end up being moved.
If he is moved, the Jets, by all accounts, are being very aggressive. They're clearly in on this guy. They have the draft capital. They have prospects. They have potentially players that could be included in this. And they also have the cap space that a lot of these other teams that are not mentioned. Murat, how significant is the fact that the Jets are sitting on $12 million in cap space as opposed to many of the other teams that would love to get a Brock Nelson in their lineup?
Yeah, it probably makes the price slightly more palatable because you're not paying extra in terms of assets to ask the Islanders to eat a portion of Brock Nelson's salary and his cap hit as well. So I think that does give Winnipeg an advantage in that regard. I'm also not necessarily under the impression, I know we've all talked about him being from War Road, Minnesota, close to Winnipeg, all those sorts of things. We know he has a 16-team no-trade clause, but I don't get the sense, again, this isn't from him, but I don't necessarily think that he wouldn't waive it. I think that this is a situation where there would be a completely legitimate chance he would waive that no-trade clause if Winnipeg was on it. So those types of things work out right. For me, it's just a matter of, with that many teams involved, what are the asking prices going to be? And even if he would come to Winnipeg, which I think he would, I really do, what if New Jersey is the team to consummate that trade? And then now you've got Brock Nelson, who has a family, he has kids, he has a life that's been moved to New York, doesn't have to move anybody, doesn't have to do anything, doesn't really have to do a whole lot different other than, get himself a place to stay closer to Prudential Center for a couple of months. So it's not as easy as Winnipeg is all in on this and therefore it's going to work. There's lots of other things going on, I believe, and we'll have to see. The interesting thing, I do think Winnipeg wants Nelson very much, is what kind of pivots that they'd be able to make if they have to in the end.
Well, that's, I guess, the next stop in this conversation. As much as it's not a road that I personally want to go down, I'd love to be talking about Brock Nelson as a Winnipeg Jet tomorrow and the excitement of what he could bring to the team for what will hopefully be a great playoff run for a team that's been at the top of the league all year long. And that is one thing I think that does play into the Jets' favor, just where this team is. And of course, they've just played against them. They know that he knows the talent on that club, probably sees the opportunity there. But there are other real life things that will go into this. But again, these guys are hockey players, and the ability to win the Stanley Cup and think you've got a legitimate shot to do it, I think is something that, maybe hasn't always been in the Jets' favor, but this year certainly would be it. If he is dealt somewhere else, or if he is held onto by the Islanders and they try to make their playoff run and he is their own rental, where would you pivot, Murat? I mean, I just asked the chat, who's next if Nelson, for whatever reason, can't get done by Cheveldayoff? We know that they would like to add particularly a guy capable of playing at the 2C. When you look at most of the trade bait boards, there is not a lot of guys that are frankly close to Brock Nelson in fitting that need.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up really well, is that there really aren't any other Nelson equivalents. I've been pumping the tires of one Ryan O'Reilly at various points. I think just that two-way ability and the dedication to fight like hell for the middle of the ice. I just love the playoff fit that I would expect Ryan O'Reilly could be. But I don't think necessarily that that's worth doing a deep dive about right now, because it seems unlikely that that's a front burner thing. So move on and talk about other people that Winnipeg's expressed interest in. And Scott Lawton doesn't necessarily scream second line center. He's a middle six player, bottom six player a lot of the time, a glue guy, a character player, somebody who can do all sorts of different things, almost Nemesnikov-esque in some ways, can play any number of different roles, but he's not giving you that same confidence that a Nelson and O'Reilly or what have you, or a Paul Stastny from 2018 would give you if you're the Winnipeg Jets. And I think that the Jets are shopping in that aisle as well. They're poking around there. But it's another situation where there's just so many teams asking, and only one Scott Lawton on the market as well. So I'm a little bit nervous about what the pivot would look like. Certainly, Cheveldayoff has done a good job in the past of finding names that we haven't talked about. And that's sort of what you've got to put a little bit of faith in, because if it is Lawton, great. There are reasons to think that he would help a team. Bottom six role. You've got Rasmus Kupari out of the lineup right now, concussion, all that sort of stuff. There are reasons to like the player, but I don't know if there are reasons to love the player at the cost of a first round pick or beyond. And that's the sort of situation that, as of this afternoon, it feels like that's what the market is shaped like.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you as well. I mean, to me, Donato in Chicago is somewhat intriguing. I mean, just with the offense that he's put up without much contribution on their power play so far this year. Because again, if you're bringing a guy in, you don't want a square peg for a round hole. You want a guy that will be able to, connect with presumably Perfetti and Ehlers on that second line, and ramp up the offensive ability while not taking a step back when it comes to the defensive game. And again, beyond Brock Nelson, I mean, it's a big significant drop off. Like, if the 2C spot is the real focus and priority of the Winnipeg Jets, that doesn't change what they're looking to do on defense. It might change what they're able to do depending on what they give up or don't give up, Murat. But how would you assess the needs and wants on the blue line for Winnipeg as we count down to tomorrow at 2?
Yeah, I think that you hear the insiders talk about depth defenseman, and all that sort of stuff. And I've talked about Rasmus Ristolainen quite often. He's better than a depth defenseman. He's a number 4. He's a number 5, kind of in that role. And I think that watching the Jets struggle to get the puck out of their own end of late, and watching some of those old habits with exits not made, watching some of the plays in front of Winnipeg's net where they're not tying up sticks as well, they're not boxing up as well. The PK has suffered a little bit. If you're going to give up a first-round pick for one of the players that we've talked about that isn't a Brock Nelson or that caliber, Ristolainen is a little bit closer to that for me. If that's not going to happen, though, if that's not something that's available, then, as not as exciting as that may sound, Carson Soucy out in Vancouver, I think would be a really good fit. He's got good relationships with plenty of existing Winnipeg Jets, former University of Minnesota Bulldog, UMD player at Duluth, with Alex Iafallo, with Neil Pionk, with Dominic Toninato and company. So there's that type of role. Really what it is for me on defense with the Winnipeg Jets is we see tremendous structure. They are a good defending team. They're well positioned. They have a good system. There are moments that they give up goals you really don't think they should, because they don't get the box out. They don't get the stick tie up. They don't clean up that particular moment. And especially because it burnt them so badly against Colorado last year, I think that they're going to be looking for size and strength and someone who will win those battles. And ideally that solidifies the third pair, or maybe in Ristolainen's case does a little bit better than that at times.
And I was hearing, was it Frank or Elliot? Maybe it was Elliot last night saying the Jets could be in for a couple of defensemen. And, and I think probably a lot of that is waiting to see what happens with the New York Islanders and what they're able to do with the 2C. Because if they're not able to get a guy of the quality of Brock Nelson, I'm not sure that there's a lot of upgrades on Vlad, to be honest with you, with some of the names that we've been talking about on this list. I mean, I think you probably would like another guy and another option, especially knowing that guys get hurt. And, you look at right now with Rasmus Kupari out, Gus is in the middle tonight. There's not that logical next guy. Certainly, you could have a call-up, but I don't think that's an ideal situation for, a young player to go in with that sort of responsibility in the playoffs, although funny stories have happened before. But all of that, there's a number of dominoes, Murat. And, I think behind the scenes right now, there's probably a number of potential deals. The framework has sort of been discussed. And at a certain point, there's a pressure point as to whether one thing is happening or not. And then you move to those other dominoes prioritized based on the reality of getting it done and the quality of player that has been discussed.
I believe that. Yeah. Kevin Cheveldayoff, despite, you go on Twitter these days or like this week, and there's a lot of Jets fans growing impatient, right? Oh, look at all these other teams.
Every single year.
Every year, it's true. And like I say, every time the Jets have been good, he's made major additions. If you want Paul Stastny, Kevin Hayes, Sean Monahan, Nemesnikov himself, Nino Niederreiter, it happens. Even last year, after they added Monahan early, there was what's he doing now? And then they picked up Tyler Toffoli and Colin Miller. And there are trades like exactly what you described that the GMs will sort of agree to in principle, or agree to, okay, if this happens, we could do this. And I think that Cheveldayoff is a fastidious GM. I think he is the sort of person that has spent a lot of this week not just planning for his plan 1A, but there's plans B through D, E, F, etc. That he would have. It seems like the Jets are in a tough spot. What with the key players being a product of a seller's market right now, but I also think that it would be really surprising if they don't find a way to make additions given the cap space and given the confidence that you should have in Winnipeg at the top of the NHL right now.
This is an interesting little wrinkle, and take this for what it's worth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff thrown out there. There's a lot of competition between insiders. Nick Kypreos has just updated his trade board, and Alex Iafallo has been added to it. Here, I'll just read you the piece from Kipper and get you to respond. As the Jets look to buy pieces for their roster, they may also consider moving at least one out. Iafallo is a soon-to-be free agent in the last year of a contract paying $4 million against the cap. The 31-year-old has 8 goals and 20 points in 62 games, has contributed to both special teams units at times, and has been a fit in Winnipeg's bottom 6. Iafallo spent 6 years in LA before they traded him in the PLD deal, but they always liked the player. I'll be honest, I mean, of all the players, you have to realize that there is the potential that someone from the roster is going to be going the other way. When I think about that bottom 6, Iafallo wasn't one of the players that I thought would be more likely moved. I just think of him as so important and so versatile to so many things that Winnipeg does. If he wasn't on the team, that would leave some holes in both of those special teams units, and a guy that can play not just on the fourth line, but up if needed.
Yeah, I agree with you. That would be my hot take as well. A moment ago, you mentioned, okay, well, Kupari's out, Gustafsson bumps up, and that's about the extent. Like, you have 13 forwards who you really trust, and Winnipeg's depth is a strength, but beyond that, it gets tested. So, it could be that Kipper's hearing about interest in Iafallo. It could be that he's hearing about, or he's thinking through the cap implications of a $4 million contract. Who knows? I actually am not sure. But Iafallo, that is the sort of player that you want on a playoff team. The idea of a fourth liner who's better than that and can be a third or second liner, that's a strength of the Jets. And for me, also, if you go by the PK, which has struggled, and there are groups and there are pairs and there are duos that struggle on that PK. Well, Iafallo's numbers in terms of like shots against per minute while he's on the ice, goals against per minute, he's been one of Winnipeg's top penalty killers as well. It would be surprising, I would say, if they moved him, and it would be surprising for sure. And the only thing that I could think of, I guess, to add to that I haven't mentioned is because it's such a seller's market. If there's some other team out there who's desperate and is offering more than Winnipeg could realistically think Iafallo would be worth, like one of those types of deals, I don't know. I can't find it, but I'm sure he's added him for a reason. I don't think that would be something that makes sense for Winnipeg.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I mean, if anything, if there was a player, that has to go in a deal, I would think it's probably one of the younger players. I mean, a player like Erasmus Kupari, a David Gustafsson, someone that, the Winnipeg Jets could probably afford to that might not be in the lineup, frankly, depending on who is added, that is young, has some team control, and, maybe attractive as a part of a piece going the other way. As far as the trade market has gone so far, you mentioned a seller's market. It really does seem like right now there are, for teams that are kind of out of it or know that even if they're not officially out of it, realistically they're not. I mean, the amount of demand for ads seems even greater than years before, because how many teams, how wide open it is, how many teams think they have a chance to win. What have you made of some of the prices that have been paid so far in deals? The one that really stands out to me is the one that Tampa swung yesterday with Seattle.
Yeah, that Seattle one, if I've got that right, I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning 2 first-round picks are top 10 protected. So if they fall into the top 10, they can bounce to the next year. If this year's Tampa Bay Lightning first-round pick is in the top 10, it can be moved to next year. And that's great, fine. But then also Seattle gets an additional third-round pick every time that happens. That is wild to me. And I know that I wouldn't say on the balance of probabilities you're expecting the Lightning to pick in the top 10, but there are structures like that, plus the fact that it's 2 first-round picks in the first place. Tampa has sort of put themselves in a place where they're now all of the time. And maybe you can do that when you sign Jake Gensel. Maybe you can do that when you've got the sort of sunshine and tax advantage that the Lightning do. It can be a strategic advantage that, well, okay, we're backfilling via UFAs in a way that, a Winnipeg wouldn't necessarily be doing. I know Vegas just traded Brendan Brisson as well. I think that's all of their first-round picks ever that they've traded before they turn 24, which is another wild one. So for me, I just see some teams insisting that the moment is always their moment, and that's kind of an exciting thing if you're a fan of those teams. I don't know that that's a play that can work for Winnipeg. But the overall thing is, I think of Sean Monahan last year. Winnipeg strikes in January, gets him for a first-round pick. And I don't necessarily think Sean Monahan is the player I'd want over Brock Nelson, but the difference is probably not going to be comparable to the difference in quality. And a first-round pick plus probably a meaningful prospect is what I'm assuming Brock Nelson gets moved for if he does. And that's an increase in price that probably doesn't correspond with the increase in quality of player.
Just speaking of the Islanders for a minute and talking about Brock Nelson, I mean, the one thing that I would certainly not put out of the question at all is that if Lou decides, okay, I'm making this deal and I am open for business, that maybe we're talking about more than just Brock Nelson. Because in one deal, you look at the blue line that the Islanders have. There's been rumors of Noah Dobson, who I think would come at a premium, being available. You got Adam Pelech, and of course Ryan Pulik, who's got some Manitoba roots. Like that would be quite blockbuster-ish if they were able to do that. But I mean, you could knock two things off that list dealing with one general manager. And again, if the price is going up for that other player, at some point, maybe they say, okay, let's rethink about the way we're doing this, and we'll give you this on a bit of a bigger package.
I mean, that's just an exciting thought because I have plenty of time for most of those players, right? I mean, Dobson's a star. Pulik is a quality player as well. And, you know, even Pelech has a toughness element to him that, you know, you can find value in. So, yeah, I have time for it. If I suggested this to Chevy in a press conference, he'd tell me it was fantasy hockey. But at the same time, like, you know, the Jets have $12 million in cap space and are the top team. They're not in this to coast, right? Like, that's not what year this is. They have the best power play in the NHL. They have Connor Hellebuck at the height of his powers in his early 30s. They have Scheifele having perhaps the best season of his entire career. There are so many different parts to this season being unique in its quality for the Winnipeg Jets that it would be a heck of a vote in the existing guys if they ultimately say, hey, we're not going to make some big swings here before Friday's over.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, I mean, I think we all have to acknowledge there are guys with no trades. I mean, you know, there are some things that we don't hear about that will prevent some deals, that probably some amazing, fascinating deals that never even get to the light of day. But it's pretty clear that, you know, this opportunity does not come around every season. And, you know, the Winnipeg Jets have earned themselves a spot where I think the players, not just the fan base, are also expecting some things to be done. Murat, while we're talking about the trade market, I've been wanting to ask you this all week since the Florida deal, where they got Seth Jones. So Seth Jones was traded to Florida. Chicago retains 25% of the deal, and the Blackhawks get Spencer Knight and a first-round pick. Jones was making $9.5 million, so a big ticket that's tough for many teams to take on. How much of the return was for Seth Jones, and how much of the return was for what looks to be like nearly $12 million that the Blackhawks are going to be having on their cap and paying as opposed to Florida? Like, I mean, is this basically Knight for Jones and then the first round pick for the retention? I'm trying to wrap my head around what the value of retention is right now, and if there kind of is a clear market that has been set for it.
Oh man, I wish I had looked at that beforehand, because there are people who have done this, that have gone through various deals where retention has been a part and tried to estimate the value of, okay, you know, they squeeze an extra 5th round pick out of it, and or something like, or they'll come up with conclusions like, hey, $1 million worth of retention is worth X draft picks, that type of stuff. Obviously, there haven't been thousands of retention deals for a sample that really makes that solid stuff, but it's not just a couple either. So there are people who've done this sort of homework. I don't have it in front of me, but that's a very real thing. And it's a thing that GMs and AGMs and all of that, the analytics teams, they work to try to understand and try to imagine what the market for various levels of retention are. My guess in this situation is like much of that first round pick is for that retention. Maybe not all of it. Maybe it was, it could be a third or something to that effect without it. But again, I'm speaking just kind of off the cuff. And there are people who've done like proper studies, and now I wish I had dug one up.
Well, that might be a fun conversation after the trade deadline is done, to kind of evaluate some of these trades and try and figure out. Because, I mean, listen, I think that Chicago is fired up that they've got Spencer Knight. I mean, he can hopefully for them be a cornerstone moving forward, a young player, highly touted first-round pick, coming in. And the first-round draft selection that they get is great. But, just being able to parse, okay, how did they come to that, and how much of the return was for a significant amount of salary retention, and not for 1 or 2, but for 5 seasons. Essentially turning the value of turning Seth Jones into a $7 million player from a $9.5 million player, very significant value for this Florida Panthers. and we move from there. What do you make of the Rantanen situation? I mean, this is, so Coolbet has been put about 2 weeks ago, an odds board, and you can bet on whether he'll be a Carolina Hurricane or on another team. And originally when they put it out, it was like 3.5 to 1 that he'd be with another team. Like basically he's going to be a Hurricane. And that number has dropped, whereas now it's close to 50-50 either way, which just seems incredible considering what happened a month ago with that deal. And I did see a real interesting piece from Steve Warrior, the former AGM of the Florida Panthers, who wrote a piece in Puckpedia last night, said he still believes that Carolina is going to keep Rantanen, and this entire exercise has been one of some kind of covert information collecting on the rest of the National Hockey League by Carolina. But where are you at on all of this? Do you think that he'll move? And if he is, how different will the return for Rantanen be today or tomorrow than it was when he was acquired from the Avs?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. And, Carolina, I guess, feeling burnt about, not being able to extend guys in the past, gave themselves as much runway as possible here. And then also, Eric Tulsky, their GM, certainly comes from an outside of hockey background. And one of the things that you often get is from those backgrounds that come with a science heavy or a data heavy sort of approach is, well, how inefficient is a market when nobody knows a player is available? Like, how many times have you heard a trade being like, oh yeah, that went down. Well, why didn't your team get involved in it? Or GMs have said, well, like if I knew that player was available, I would go for that.
Yeah, the name Luka Doncic comes to mind.
Yeah, one of the top players in the NBA. Like that's incredible stuff. And I think like one other wrinkle to this is probably Eric Tulsky in Carolina saying that's not going to happen to us. We took a really big, ambitious swing here, and we're covering our asses as much as possible, such that we have prices from all 31 rival GMs that if that's how many are interested in Rantanen. Because if they do have to go through with this and they only talked to the 2 or 3 teams they have a really good phone relationship with, like that's just doing a disservice to them. And I really think that like if they don't think they can sign him, then yes, they have to make the decision, own, rental, or trade. And I don't know. Maybe I'm 55-45, he'd be moved, but we also watched them hold on to a guy last year and let him walk. So yeah, like I don't think that it's for nothing. I think it's for very good reasons, and I still don't feel like I know what's going to happen.
I know Frank just dropped his latest update of his trade board and said that the Canes have multiple compelling offers on the table for the non-committal Mikko Rantanen. And I will tell you, check out that article in Puckpedia by Steve. Very interesting from an AGM agent's perspective on what Rantanen and his representation might do to try to maximize his value over 9 years as opposed to 8. You can check that out. Of course, you're in Philly because there's a game tonight. And maybe it's good that we're having all this trade deadline talk so people can't get the heebie-jeebies about the fact that we haven't seen many wins over the last week or so. What do you make about just the last week for the Winnipeg Jets, just with the 1 point in their last 3 games?
Yeah, it hasn't really been great hockey. It hasn't been miserable hockey either, but it hasn't been Winnipeg at its best by any stretch. I thought that the middle six, the other day against the Islanders, being the Lowry line, being the Nemesnikov line, I thought that they went out and had a really great start to that game. I thought that the first 10 minutes of it were very much in Winnipeg's favor. And then they ran into trouble. And maybe one of those trouble spots was the Lowry fight, and then eventually there's a penalty taken, the Islanders scored, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. But I really thought that the glue guys, the heart and soul guys, the middle six really drove things phenomenally to start that game. And it makes me think that the Jets aren't that far away from themselves. And then you go and you look at the 5-on-5 numbers at the end of it, and for one of the only times this season, Scheifele's line got tuned. They got smoked. Like it was like 20-3 in terms of shot attempts against them, and it didn't seem to matter whether they were playing in front of Stanley and Pionk or whether it was Morrissey and DeMello. And I'm not saying it was all on the forwards, but some of it was. And one of the things I'm concerned about right now, maybe it's the time of year, maybe it's Maybe it's coming out of Four Nations and various different emotions around it. But you're starting to see hope plays on Winnipeg's top line for the first time all year. You're really, those zone exits, you're watching them get stuffed on their way out of Winnipeg's blue line. You're watching them get beaten in transition. Some of the coverage hasn't been what it was. This is a line that has been above average for a first line all season long. And what they did against the Islanders was absolutely not to that standard. So I'm not worried about the Winnipeg Jets being good or bad, or like, I'm not worried about their quality as a team. I'm not worried about this turning into an extended slide, or, oh, okay, they weren't really a playoff contender anyway. That's not my fear. It's just how quickly and how effectively can that top line get back to defending first, to committing to the exits, to eating the checks it needs to do, to staying on the right side of the puck all the way up the ice. And those habits haven't been there for, I think, since the Four Nations break, if you're asking me, and that needs to get better.
Murat, we're going to be looking forward to a busy day tomorrow. Of course, Philly tonight, Jersey tomorrow. Chevy and the gang are staying in Philly. What's the next 24, 48 hours like for you?
I'm going to try. So, honestly, I've been sick. I have like a stomach bug or food poisoning or something like that. So I haven't eaten a meal since yesterday at about 11 a.m. So after this, I'm going to try. And then from there, I saw the Dreger deal. Hopefully that they give us a little bit before any major moves get announced over the next little while. But I'll be here in Philadelphia. I'll be at the game. I'll be staying in town tonight, taking the train to Newark tomorrow, and then speaking to Chevy with other reporters before the New Jersey Devils game and see what he had cooked up for us.
Well, listen, I appreciate you jumping on at less than 100%. Hope you feel better, pal, and have a safe trip, and hopefully an exciting next little bit for both fans and everybody covering the team.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it as always. There's Murat Atesh. Theathletic.com is where you'll find all of Murat's work on the Winnipeg Jets, on the trade deadline. Make sure you're subscribed there. And, of course, you can follow him on X at WPG Murat. All right. Hey, do want to shout out our friends at BP. I think the IC guys are having a little BP watch party tonight over at Grant Park, or the Grant Park Boston Pizza. I'm going to probably pop by and have a couple schooners and watch the game with the fellas this evening. Of course, BP anywhere in the city is the best place to get together with your gang to watch the Jets. Game on all the big screens, full sound, and of course, pick a player contest where you'll grab a card if you're of a Winnipeg Jet, and if they score, you'll spin the BP prize wheel for great BP food and swag from Royal Sports. And hey, if you are staying at home, you can get all your BP favorites, including everything on the new February feature menu, by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. We'll maybe wait until 3 o'clock tomorrow to see the way this Jets team looks, and then you can lock it in and start getting ready for the push to the playoffs, and of course, some whiteouts coming to Winnipeg in the spring. When you're thinking about your jersey selection or white Jets outfits, no better place to get down on it than Royal Sports, with the biggest selection in Jets merchandise that you will find anywhere. And of course, other great things like, well, that new Jets new era collab hat wall with, frankly, Jet hats that you will not find anywhere else because they are one-off runs. They're all there for you. New Bomber gear, and of course, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, the biggest hockey section in town, and so many cool gift ideas and more on the King Skate, Snow, and Surf side, including Yeti coolers and their full Herschel section. Royal Sports, been with us since show 1 all the way up to show 1001. Support local, 750 Pembina Highway. Check them out on Instagram as well for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. I mentioned BP. We're planning on what should be a great night at Boston Pizza Garden City. 2 weeks today against the Edmonton Oilers. Our friends at Little Brown Jug and Boston Pizza have requested the WST crew for a little watch party as the Jets take on the Oilers. We'll have some great prizes from Little Brown Jug. We'll do some fun contests at the intermission, and hopefully we'll see the Jets get a win against the Edmonton Oilers. So save the date, 2 weeks today, over at BP Garden City up on McPhillips. Looking forward to seeing some folks that maybe haven't had a chance to come down to the south side for some of our other events. We'll be heading up to McPhillips the 20th, so 2 weeks today. But tonight, probably popping by and seeing the IC boys down at Boston Pizza, Grant Park. All right. Hey, speaking of Little Brown Jug, maybe we'll crack a couple at the end of a long, extended show tomorrow. But before we just check in with our friend Andrea Senebald from the HSC Foundation, a big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, gang, we are into overtime in the final few days of the Fund a Need campaign for the Health Sciences Center Foundation, along with Winnipeg Sports Talk. And I wanted to bring in our good friend from the Health Sciences Center Foundation, Andrea Gansel, as we come close to wrapping it all up. It is a pleasure to have you on the program. How are you?
I'm good. And the fact that you use my maiden name tells you just how long we've known each other.
Oh, my God. Sorry about that. You'll always be Gansel to me. Yes, Andrea Senebald. Sorry. It's basically on the screen.
I'll always be Gansel in the hockey world. That's great.
Yeah, we go way back to our Moose days. And you know what? It's been, like, for us, it's been so great to be able to partner up with you guys and try and help, a really important campaign for you guys. I know that the auction went amazing, and I'm really looking forward to getting out to Aikens Lake and appreciate their support with Mark. But, I mean, this is something that you guys are doing 12 months a year because of how important the need is right now, Andrea. Just quickly touch on, what we're raising money for and how we can help the incredibly stressed emergency services down at Manitoba's biggest hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate your support. You know all too well what the emergency department can do. And unfortunately, everyone at some point will have to access the adult emergency department, whether themselves or a loved one. It is Manitoba's emergency department, right? The most critical cases go there: motor vehicle accidents, strokes, burns, multi-system, injuries and illness. They end up at the HSC Adult Emergency Department. And we know all too well how stressed that system is. So this year at our Fund a Need auction at our Savor event, we decided to support by purchasing some equipment that they really need to increase the level of patient care they can do at the bedside, right? Just to make their job a little bit easier. And so, your community has stepped up. It was great. Through our online auction, we were able to raise a record amount of money this year at our event and through our Fund a Need. We had, sort of a list of 8 different kinds of pieces of equipment they needed. And because we've done so well, we've been able to say to them now, we can get a couple more. Like, it's not like the need isn't there. And so we've been really happy to be able to do that. And we were able to speak to the emergency department physicians the other day, and they shared with us just how appreciative their staff were, to feel like the donor community has stepped up and helped them, made them feel really seen and supported, and just, they work so hard day in and day out. And so it's been great to be able to do that. And thank you to Pitt for stepping up again with such a great auction prize. The Aikens Lake trip is something we've done for many years with him. He's just incredibly generous, and for you for hosting. And I'm so glad to report that a Winnipeg Sports Talk fan has won, which is great. It should be a great trip.
Well, listen, I'm completely jacked to get out there and meet Mark. And I know apparently he's an Aikens Lake veteran, knows how special and amazing that place is. So we'll have a great time to come out there. But as we mentioned, we are trying to really finish strong. And I think there's a lot of people that would have loved to have made a bid on a big ticket item like the Aikens Lake trip that, weren't able to. But at the same time, I mean, we can still make a difference right now and get in on a Jets jersey autographed by the whole team. We're still taking donations, folks, through the weekend and into next week. We do have a link in the description of the podcast if you're listening to this on the audio version, certainly on the YouTube, and we'll get that up in the chat right now as well. But fill people in on our overtime campaign, trying to get a few last donations in before you wrap this huge month for the HSC Foundation.
Yeah, we really wanted to keep it open for your community to sort of participate at that level, right? There is such a need for philanthropy in supporting our healthcare system. And this is a great way to do it. And they were just so engaged. And like I said, the need does not go away. The fact that we had 8 pieces of equipment they needed doesn't mean that's all they need. Buying 15 would be incredible. And so we really wanted to keep it open and just try to do the best that we could to make a small donation. If it's just $25 or $50 that you can give, that really helps. It makes a big difference. And it's just a nice fitting tie-in with how busy your week is. Your 1,000th show yesterday. I mean, I think 1,001 is even better. Like, you're over 1,000 now. This is a pretty great show today. So it's a great way for your community to get involved and support, and I'm so happy that you're giving us this opportunity.
Well, listen, we appreciate it, and as I said, I'll always be appreciative to the folks and the professionals and the staff at the Health Sciences Center for how they helped me a few years back, and it was a great opportunity for us to be able to kind of team up with our incredible community and try and make a difference. As we mentioned, we do have an autographed Jets jersey that will be given away next week. So if you would like to make a donation, if you're able to, you'll get a tax receipt on any donation of $25 or more, and everything coming in through our link, we will put in and we'll announce that winner next week. But it is something, Andrea, that like every donation really does count. You're leaning on a whole bunch of different ways to raise funds. I mean, the gala was a huge hit. Obviously, there was a bunch of auctions. But this is a way that every Manitoba and every WST listener can kind of chip in and make a difference for services that, at the end of the day, save lives of our friends and family members.
Absolutely. And, our end goal is better patient care. And that's throughout the hospital, right? It's the one thing that's really been consistent in meeting some of the surgeons and physicians that I've met. You forget, you hear everything that's going on, but you forget that these are people that went into this because they want to help people. And so to be able to help them give better patient care is incredible. And they're incredibly thankful for it.
It's been so great. And let's finish strong, folks. The link is in the description. We'll get it on the in the chat as well, and good luck on potentially being the person that we announce winning the jersey next week on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Andrea Senebald. That might be the first time I've actually called you that ever.
Maybe you shouldn't. It doesn't sound. It's like me calling you Andrew.
Listen, at some point I should recognize your marriage, so I'll do that publicly on the program. And listen, thank you again. It's been awesome working with you guys. Continued success to everyone at the hospital and obviously the foundation. And we'll see if we can take this campaign into OT and put us over the finish line. Thanks so much, Andrea, and have a great one.
Yeah, thanks to you guys. Thanks for all your help. We really appreciate it.
A world-class fly-in fishing getaway right here in the province of Manitoba, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg with world-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from Pitt, Julie, the Terrence family, and the amazing staff over at Aikens Lake. If you're planning on staying in Canada this year, as opposed to maybe changing it up, consider Aikens Lake. Find out more online, aikenslake.com. Booking now well into the summer for the 2025 fishing season, and looking forward to firing it up out at Aikens with Mark and his guest. And again, a huge thanks to him for supporting the HSC Foundation, of course, to Pitt and the Aikens Lake squad for doing the same as well. All right, let's get Remo back in here. Remo, we did have a trade. It was not the trade anyone was expecting. Chris Vigier coming back home to Manitoba as a third goalie for the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for Capo Kakinen. And now we have, 23 hours and 6 minutes until tomorrow's deadline. And just before we get to the Coolbet lines and focus on tonight, tomorrow's going to be a very, very fun show. And I know Jacob Stoller is going to join us, and I know you were just mentioning in a note while we were doing that last bit that Jacob reporting that the Winnipeg Jets in on Carson Soucy with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Tico and Apolli. Just gave us a super chat, which is supposed to be a donation for the HSC Foundation. It's to spinal cord and syringe myella research at the HSC Foundation. So we'll pass on that super chat. Thank you very much, Ticona Pauly. And yeah, it's funny. All this talk about Carson Soucy. You know what comes to mind when I think of Carson Soucy? I remember he took a really dumb penalty against the Jets a couple years ago when he was with the Kraken, and the Jets scored with him in the box to tie the game up and then won in overtime. But he's that kind of like hard-nosed player. But I think he got fined actually for like punching Pierre-Luc Dubois with his glove on, like really, really dumb penalty at the end of the game. But that's the type of guy the Jets need on their team, right, Hustler? A guy who's going to punch someone with their glove on, make them think when they go in front of the net. Isn't that right?
Well, listen, I'm here for that. I'm not here for dumb penalties, though. I mean, I think that. Well,
I mean, that was a couple years ago. People don't forget. I don't forget that sort of thing. I think it was always Wheeler's. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Is one thing will happen against your team in one of 82 games, and it sort of stands out to you. So I get it. You remember things guys did against the Winnipeg Jets more than the other 70 odd games that you didn't see them play in a particular season.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Do we have a trade to announce?
No, I'm just texting Ken like what they just sent me an essay back. I'll have to read it. I'll have to read it.
Set out some time later on in your schedule to read Ken's text.
Yeah, well, so it's going to be very fluid with tomorrow's show in terms of guests and stuff when the Jets make trade. So we'll see.
Sure. And we get all that. But we're going to be live at 11.
Yeah.
Connor's going to jump on. Rowicki's going to pop on with us early in the show. He does have a set schedule tomorrow. Maybe we'll tell you about that when he joins us tomorrow. And then a number of guests. Ken will join us from the road. Mike will pop on at some point. And we'll hang with you from 11 till after 3 p.m., bang on a marble race and see what this Winnipeg Jet roster looks like post-trade deadline, heading down the stretch, looking to clinch the Central Division, the Western Conference, and have a great playoff run in whites down in Winnipeg. Listen, let's get over to the Coolbet lines. Do not forget, everybody, Sunday is our next Lock Shop WST EST poker tourney over at Coolbet. I'm coming off my best performance, second place, only to be taken out by one of our favorites, WST Randy D, aka Randy River, when it comes to it. But yes, next tourney, and we've made it a little earlier this time with a Sunday night, and I guess we're springing forward this weekend. So 8 p.m. will be the start here in Winnipeg, 7 o'clock for our friends out in Edmonton. If you haven't played in them before and you do like poker and online poker, join us. It's a whole lot of fun. We'll have details on social media, but what you're going to want to do is just go over to coolbet.com, click on poker, download the poker software, and then you'll be good to go. Pop in. What you're going to want to do is go to tournaments and there's a little magnifying glass that you can search a tournament. If you just put in Lock Shop tournament will come up, and hopefully we'll see you at 8. Good luck to everyone. And by the way, a little extra bonus. If you take myself or Remis out, or Dustin Nielsen or Tom Gazzola, there's $100 bounty on all of our heads. Looking forward to that. So Sunday night, mark that down. Our next edition of the Lock Shop Poker Open. Now, to the Briar we go. And coming up at 3:30, a heavyweight tilt for first place in the pool. It's Matty Dunstone of Manitoba at 6-1 versus the undefeated Brad Gushu. And, you know, when we were doing the Lock Shop, this line dropped at Manitoba minus 189 and Canada, Gushu plus 140. I was shocked. I'm not surprised that this line is coming a lot closer. The Gushu's number is down all the way to even money. And Dunstone minus 135. Other matchups, Cooey versus Newfoundland. Cooey's a big favorite. BC and New Brunswick going at it. BC minus 208, and Northern Ontario a 5.5 Rock favorite against the team from Nunavut. And then tonight, on the other side, undefeated Brad Jacobs, undefeated Mike McEwen, both 7-0. The winner will win the group. And we did have that nice exclusive that I put together before the tournament started for Dunstone and Jacobs to win their groups. So if Matt can win this afternoon and Jacobs can win tonight, that one will come in. And I think we got that one. I'm just going to take a look in my open wagers here. Yeah, that one was plus 285. So pulling for Dunstone and Jacobs to make that one happen. Of course, a little later on this afternoon, the odds will come out. We don't yet have them for the Jacobs-McEwen matchup. And then tomorrow, we'll be getting into playoff action as we look forward to crowning a champion in that beautiful arena they've got out in Kelowna, hosting this year's Montana's Brier. To the NHL we go. We got a busy slate of games tonight. Boston's in Carolina. The Canes minus 323 favorites. Remis, this was a weird line to me. Utah in Detroit. And Detroit was a plus 115 favorite earlier. That number's come down slightly to plus 113. I know the Wings have, lost those 2 games to Columbus and then one to Carolina. This is like a playoff game for Detroit. I expect a big bounce back from Todd McClellan's team. I'm on the home dog here, but I'm just sort of surprised that Utah's favored on the road against a team like Detroit. Both of them are in very similar positions.
Yeah, interesting to note. And Utah making some news yesterday, signing our favorite goalie, Karel Vejmelka, to a 5-year deal. And
I missed that. How much did he get?
I think it was similar to Lankin. It came
like around
late
6
last night. That was like 5. Let me just.
All right. Pull that up while I continue through the lines here. The Panthers minus 323 at home against the Blue Jackets. We'll finish up with the Jets. Tampa minus 244 home favorites against the Buffalo Sabres. The Stars minus 250 favorites against the Calgary Flames. Nashville minus 130 at home to the Kraken. We've just seen a number of their players walk out the door. Tanev's not going to play tonight for trade reasons. The Oilers minus 238 at home against the Habs. And the Avalanche a big minus 417 favorite against the upstart Sharks, who put together a couple wins this week. And then as far as the Jets game goes, Eric Comrie versus Urson. We saw Hellebuck versus Fedotov on Saturday. Not disappointed that Fedotov won't be in net, and he was good against Winnipeg. The Jets are minus 143 favorites. Philly plus 121. The total for tonight's game is 5.5. And I did put together a little WST parlay in the exclusive section. Waiting for Kyle Connor to break out. He's been shooting the puck a ton. It just hasn't gone in. I have a feeling tonight is the night. We've got a Jets to win, a Kyle Connor goal, Mark Scheifele and Josh Morrissey both to get an assist tonight. Heck, that could all happen on one goal. You never know. Plus 700, 7-1 boosted in the Coolbet exclusives. And if you go to the main page and see the combo cards, we did put together our lock shop partner parlay with a nice little boost. We're taking Detroit as a home dog. We are taking Tampa over Buffalo and taking the Nashville Predators at minus 130 against the Seattle Kraken. That was plus 432, boosted up to plus 497. So you can jump on those. A couple of other interesting ones. The Super Boost tonight is a Mark Scheifele point and a Leon Draisaitl point, boosted up to plus 105. They're going streaking. Some hot teams right now. Panthers to win, Stars to win, Lakers to win, boosted to plus 233. And Josh Morrissey's in on the defenseman scoring one. The points from the point. A Morrissey point, Bouchard point, Makar point, plus 286. Some other great options that Jake, Patty, and the gang have cooked up right there in the combo cards at the top of the page. And if you go to the exclusives, you'll find the Winnipeg Sports Talk parlay tonight. Connor goal, Scheifele and Morrissey assist, Jets to win. That is boosted up to 7-1. to 1. And I will have to wait. The afternoon delight is going to be, we're riding with Matt Dunstone in this game against Jacobs. So we'll see. Maybe add in, I know we had a nice 8-1 winner that I put together basically live. So if we're looking at this afternoon, if we take Dunstone, if we take BC minus 1.5 against New Brunswick, and I tell you what, I've liked what this Newfoundland team has been doing. They've been hanging in games. It's been closer. We'll take Newfoundland plus 3.5. Put that in. That's plus 485. So that'll be the afternoon delight. Dunstone to win, BC minus 1.5, and Newfoundland plus 3.5, plus 485. We'll lock that in. And as I said, go Dunstone and go Jacobs. We can cash that ticket that we put out at the beginning of the year. Again, don't forget Sunday night, our next Lock Shot Poker Series tournament. Hope we will see you there. Remo, gonna keep it tight today because we got a huge day tomorrow, live at 11 a.m. And in the meantime, we got to get this podcast up so people can get it all in before puck drop at 6.
Yeah, it's kind of a busy 2 days where we have Jets back-to-back plus the trade deadline. So there's going to be a lot to discuss tomorrow for sure. You know, we'll see when trades happen. I will have my phone on me. I don't know if you saw Elliot on TNT. His phone, you know, it tells you how many hours of screen time you have.
His screen time?
You know what his screen time was like 2 days ago?
No.
It said 20 hours. Like, how is it even possible? Who's awake for them?
Elliot. NHL insiders around the trade deadline.
You're sleeping with the phone like on, like turning off lock, and like.
That's why Woj hung up the phone and went to be the coach or the GM of some college team. Got to reclaim, get your life back.
Man, he probably has his phone like in the shower with him.
He's talked about that for sure. No, they have like a little thing where they can look at it as they're doing a quick rinse.
Woj interrupted sex to break a trade with his wife. He said that. So, I mean, yeah, when you say get your life back, like, literally, like these guys are glued to the phone.
So, hey, tomorrow we'll have a bunch of people jumping on an extended show, 4+ hours, starting at 11 a.m. Join us early if you can. And we promise you, we will have the audio of our reaction. Trade deadline memories on WST from when the Winnipeg Jets acquired Matt Hendricks, one of our favorite clips that Remis somehow found.
I found that. I'm going through the old trade deadline trades just the last couple years. My favorite one was when they traded Bogdan Kiselevich, and he never played. The only reason why I like that trade is one of my friends texted me. He's like, "Have you heard of Bogdan Kiselevich?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "He just called me asking about subletting my condo." I was like, so he'll always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I got him in my fantasy. We got a deep league. Very deep.
Yeah. No, but I mean, the Jets have been buyers the last couple of years, so it's been exciting. Nothing for me has beats the Paul Stastny trade. I was, was in my office at the old station and literally like running around the building because it was so out of nowhere.
I'll never forget that. I was sitting. I was in the bullpen.
Okay.
Back just kind of like a little bit of a more common area for the TSN guys. And I think a Soar was there, and maybe one of the interns that we had at the time, maybe Dorashuk or something like that before he was working there. I can't remember, but I had to, it was one of those ones, is this real? Wait a second. Let's make sure that this is verified. Oh my God. Paul Stastny's coming to Winnipeg. Who knows? Maybe we'll have another one of those moments tomorrow. Brock Nelson's the top of my wish list. Sounds like he's at the top of Chevy's wish list as well. Whether Lou Lamoriello is willing to trade him, whether the Jets can get the deal done, we'll find out in less than 24 hours, but we'll be all over it here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. In the meantime, enjoy tonight's game, 6 o'clock in Philly. We'll break it down tomorrow and take you all around the league with the latest in the National Hockey League and at the trade deadline, beginning at a special time of 11 a.m. And yes, we will do marbles once everything settles down in and around 3 p.m. So make sure to join us then. Thanks again to Andrea Senebald. Thanks to Murat, JP Vigier, all of you for starting the next 1,000 episodes of Winnipeg Sports Talk with us today. And a huge thanks to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Have a great evening tonight, folks. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you tomorrow at a special time of 11 for our trade deadline special here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.